So we're now 10 episodes into The Last of Us, and that season 2 premiere, I will say, was the worst episode we've had so far, but it still had some really important moments in it, and it also gave us one of the scariest moments up to this point in the entire show. So let's get into it. All right, so season 2 of The Last of Us is finally upon us. A season that they've told us is just going to be bigger, way bigger sets, bigger stunts, just more emotion, they've told us. And just a heads up before we get into this video will have some spoilers in it as well. So yeah, you have been warned. So, I mean, season 1 of The Last of Us is one of the greatest video game adaptations of all time. Without question, I love season 1. So many great moments, so many ups and downs, emotional moments, action moments, holy shit moments. It's just incredible. I have a full ranking of all of the episodes in season 1 on my channel if you want to check that out. Now, yeah, I did just mention that I do think this is the worst episode up to this point thus far in the show. But does that mean it's a bad post-apocalyptic TV show episode? No. Absolutely not. There are a lot of great things that we'll talk all about, of course, in this video, in this episode. But, you know, just as far as The Last of Us goes, even just HBO in general, I mean, they set the bar pretty damn high in season 1. And I feel like there's a lot of things in this episode that just didn't quite, hit that. But like I mentioned earlier, we do get one of the scariest, just most like horror-like sequences up to this point in the entire show, which is a really great moment later on in the episode, kind of in the back half when Ellie is inside of that grocery store. A really fun and I will say a damn scary, tense moment. In this episode too, not only does Ellie's character evolve a bit, we're starting to see where she's at, of course, Joel as well, but we're starting to see a new love interest for Ellie also implemented into the show. But also a big moment in that grocery store as well, showing a new kind of infected, showing the infected up to this point after all these years has started to evolve. Like, this isn't just going to be kind of like a stagnant sort of an outbreak, kind of like The Walking Dead, where the zombies in that show are just kind of the same. They're slow. They're not really evolving from the Walking Dead episodes, at least that I've seen, over the years. But, they introduced this new infected that's a little more smart, calculated. It's playing cat and mouse with its food. But we'll talk all about that as we get further into the episode and all of that. Now, keep in mind, as I kind of talk about the good things and the bad things in this episode, especially when I criticize this episode, I get this isn't the first episode for this entire TV show. This isn't a series finale or a season finale or anything like that also. I get that aspect of it. And really, my gripe with this particular episode isn't the fact that not a lot is happening in that first half. I don't really have a big problem with that. I get that now we're at a new point for these characters. We have to kind of show where they're at in this story. Obviously, they went to the settlement at Jackson. That's going to be a little bit more settled down. They're not going to be constantly in danger, constantly on the run. I get that. My gripe, though, doesn't have to do with that, because there's a lot of things in the first half that help to set up the rest of the season and are really important. But I felt like there were a lot of things in this episode that felt weirdly kind of sloppy for The Last of Us, a show that typically I feel like is so buttoned up and is so detail oriented, which just felt weird. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So, right off the bat, we open up, and once again, we're kind of at the end of season 1, right as Joel is lying to Ellie about everything that happened in Salt Lake in the hospital. But now they're kind of walking towards a settlement. I think we just see a little bit extra in that. And then right after that, we go back to Salt Lake and we kind of see the aftermath of everything Joel did, because some of those people, really didn't deserve what happened to them. They were a part of the Fireflies. They had good intentions, but of course, because Joel, is so close to Ellie, doesn't want to lose another person who he sees as a daughter. He's just like, all right, I'm going to make my choice. Now you can debate till the end of time if Joel made the right choice or a choice that you would decide to make, or vice versa, for the betterment of mankind. Obviously, that's a debate that you can make. But, we get introduced to the aftermath, like I said. And I love the fact that Caitlin Dever is now going to be playing Abby in The Last of Us. I'm a big fan of her. She's great. Ever since I saw her in No One Will Save You, that alien abduction, mostly silent movie, which is actually really damn good. I believe came out in 2023, which was one of my top 10 favorite horror movies of that entire year. Really fun movie. So I was looking forward to seeing her in this. And yeah, so her dad was killed by Joel. And so we're introduced to them, kind of hanging out around the grave sites of everyone that they buried from the hospital after everything that went down. And we're starting to see this angle with Abby's character, very similar to what happened with Joel at the end of episode 1, season 1, where he loses his daughter. Now he's on a revenge tour. He's got this chip on his shoulder. He's pissed. So now Caitlin Dever's character, Abby, is going to be very similar. And also, it's a weird angle where it's like, okay, Abby's kind of a villain now, but she's not at the same time. It kind of depends what angle you're looking at, because obviously Joel, basically murdered her dad, so she has a right to be mean. It's not like this group of Fireflies we're now going to start to follow, as eating people or just doing objectively just horrible things from what we can tell. So it's kind of interesting. It's like, who's the villain, who's not the villain. So I'm definitely curious to see kind of how that plays out. But right away in this episode 2, it kind of feels like some of the side characters, I don't know, something feels a little bit weird. They almost feel like characters you would see in like a CW show. Now, no shade towards the CW. Love me some Vampire Diaries. That's pretty fun. But some of these characters and the acting and just sort of their age, I like The Last of Us to be a little bit more adult. It's starting to feel pretty young with some of the characters we're getting introduced with, not only in that Firefly group, but also the characters that Ellie is interacting with. When they go with that trope of, oh, you thought this main character was badass in the first season? Well, guess what? She's now learning jujitsu, and she's taking down this dude that's got, like 80 pounds on her. That trope, I guess, is okay. I don't really love it. But again, my gripe with that and what feels weird is it's like, okay, we're getting some new side characters, which obviously we had a ton of those in season 1. But I don't know, the acting feels a little mediocre. Doesn't feel great, which immediately gets me a little bit worried. The new girl, Dina, though, she seems great. She seems like she's going to be a really, really good addition to the show. She's also Ellie's love interest now. But yeah, really looking forward to seeing how her character evolves. She's very similar to Ellie in some ways. She's more of like a type A personality, where Ellie is a little bit more reserved at times, obviously because of a lot of things I'm sure, that happened to her over the years and all that. But yeah, looking forward to seeing Dina's character, Ellie's new love interest, and just how that all evolves. But something just feels off with this episode right off the bat. Even Pedro, Pedro Pascal, Joel, right immediately. I don't know. Even his fake Texas accent immediately feels a little bit more forced, which just feels weird to me. Plus also, we're introduced again to Joel and where he's at. We're transporting 5 years after everything that happened at the hospital. Abby's group is now going to try to hunt down Joel. They have a basic description of maybe where he would be, kind of the direction he went, kind of what he looks like, and now they're going to hunt him down. But now, we're introduced to Joel. All right, what is Joel up to? And I'm like, oh, damn it. They decided to go this angle with the character. Now, I have played the first game multiple times. Love that game. I haven't played the second game, though, so maybe this is exactly how he is in the second game. But to me, I'm like, oh, man, Joel's now sitting behind a desk. He's just basically a contractor again. It's like, they had to make his character go all boring on us, didn't they? Damn, I don't love that. Though I will say the set design with this settlement in Jackson, Wyoming, man, it is incredible. Fully expected that. We saw a lot of it, of course, in season 1, but it looks so damn good with the mountains and all that. Plus, I just love the fact that we're back in a post-apocalyptic world, but in the winter. There's something about the apocalypse and winter fighting the harsh elements of the winter along with the infected and all of that. I love it. That's a big reason why my horror short film I made also took place in the winter. There's just something about that. I am a sucker for that type of an environment. Also with that apocalyptic angle just layered on top. And with Ellie's character in this episode and 5 years later, how she's evolving, she's at a different stage in life. Obviously, when you're 13, 14 years old, you tack on 5 years. That's huge. I just don't really love following Ellie now in this episode so far. Obviously, it's probably going to get a lot better as the season goes along, but she's now at that stage where she doesn't want to, give Joel the time of day. She's a teenager or whatever. She's just kind of like, leave me alone. I want to hang out with my friends and hang out with my new love interest or whatever the hell. It just is so dull to me and uninteresting and unoriginal. Obviously, we've seen it a million times. Obviously, it is a very realistic approach, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to see it in the show. I prefer to see a different side of the character. I have a daughter. She's 5 years old. I'm fully preparing, even all these years early, for her teenage years, but still, it just seems just not interesting and boring to me. Now, I'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, but I am very optimistic about the direction this season is going. Don't get me wrong, despite the criticisms I'm saying here and whatnot, but one thing going into this season I was really worried about is season 1 very much based on mainly the first game, a game that many people consider the greatest story-based single-player video game of all time, a game that I love, like I said, a game that I've played multiple times, and it's just incredible. Whereas I've heard the second game, still a lot of fun, has a lot of great aspects to it, but I've heard is nowhere near as good as the first game. And, big shoes to fill. That's very hard to do. But that also gets me worried with the show. Is it going to be like Game of Thrones, where the writers and the creators, when they really have to veer off of the tracks, off of the path, the template that first incredible game has for them, which is essentially a template. Like, hey, take this as the foundation, run with it. When they have to veer off of that and maybe kind of mark their own path, is things going to kind of fall off the tracks a little bit, like it did, in my opinion, with Game of Thrones, especially, later on in that show? I don't know. I mean, obviously, I hope not, but there are some things in this episode, this season 2 premiere, that do get me a little bit worried. Now, don't get me wrong, episode 3 of season 1 with Bill and Frank was mainly their own thing. Frank in the video game was already dead. We didn't really get that whole story. So that episode, they basically came up with completely on their own, which was an incredible episode. One of the greatest, probably, TV show episodes I've ever seen. A very emotional episode that is done so well and definitely was ranked very, very high on my ranking of all the episodes in season 1. So they have shown us that they can do some incredible stuff that's just not a copy and paste of the game, but there are some stuff, like I said, in this first season premiere here of season 2 that get me a little worried. Now, of course, in this season, especially with that replay of their conversation right before they get back to the settlement to Jackson, replaying Joel's lie about everything that happened in the hospital, is telling us that's going to be a major, major factor for this entire season. Probably right, but I mean, I don't know. It feels weird that we're 5 years after that conversation and Ellie is still pissed. Like really, really pissed about that. Like it happened 5 days ago. I don't know. It just feels weird. I know Joel is not the type of guy to like sit down, hey, let's talk about our feelings. I get that. Even though he's in therapy, he's making some strides in that way, but they haven't squashed any of this in 5 years. And I guess there's a little ambiguity there as well. Maybe there's more to it than that. But still, there's something about that. Maybe this is a nitpick that feels a little embellished. Like the beef is that bad. You haven't even had a little chat about it at all. So I do think it's really fun when we're following this patrol. They're venturing outside of the settlement. So to me, I'm like, all right, cool. We get to see some new stuff here. I want to see kind of what's outside in the town and what's happened in the surrounding areas. But there are some moments with that whole sequence that feels so sloppy. It's definitely one of those moments in this season that like I said, feels a little off to me. First of all, they're basically sending the dumbest of dumb. Not to say Ellie's dumb, but we'll talk about what I mean in just a second. The dumbest of dumb on this patrol, or they're just sending like these very young, naive kids that aren't really that wise or probably going to make some dumb decisions, and when Ellie goes into town with Dina, I mean, they know inside of the store there are clickers in there. They see, the bear that's been torn to shreds. They see some clickers dead. And they know there's at least one clicker inside of the store, but yet they go in anyways. They don't try to draw it out into the open and then kill it there. That would give you a little rush. Like if you're just a kid who's trying to get a rush or have some fun or kind of break the chains of this settlement and be free and do something that's a little risky. I just feel like those two going inside of the store literally makes no sense to me. I mean, you have this well-crafted, really well thought out community that has been cultivated over the years and had so much time put into it. And you guys are just taking unnecessary risks like this. Even the people on the patrol with them are like, oh, you better not go in there. But they don't really make any effort to stop them at all. Now, I get it. They're young, and when you're young, you do a lot of dumb shit. I mean, hell, I did plenty, a lot of things I don't ever want to think about because I was so stupid when I was their age. And I know obviously Ellie is immune, but she could still die. She could still get ripped to shreds. She could still bleed out, whatever. But it feels like you got to have somebody on this patrol that's, smart or wise enough to really try to stop them. But like I said, they just kind of sit on their horse and they're like, don't go in there. Don't go. Okay. Oh, well, And then Ellie's in there for a really long time, especially as she falls through into the other area of the store. They're in there for a really long time. And nobody thinks that's weird and tries to help. They're not like, well, they've been in there a while. Maybe something's wrong. No, not at all. It's just another one of those things. It just feels like a weird creative choice that I get people make mistakes, but it feels more like an error with the writing to me. But yes, like I mentioned earlier, this episode does give us one of the most horror-like, tense, and scary moments, I think, up to this point in the show, in my opinion, when Ellie falls through. I mean, you could probably guess that something's going to happen down there. Like, they're kind of setting the mood for that. But I love how they show that blurry shot behind her. Something's moving. You're like, wait, hang on. This feels a little different because clickers don't act like this. Is this a human thing? Is this an animal? At first, I actually thought it was some sort of an animal that was infected, like a cat or a dog that was sneaking around. But immediately, like, it's very, very tense. It's a cool cat and mouse moment. Almost made me think of like the kitchen scene in Jurassic Park a little bit. But it's just the lighting, the mood of it all, the atmosphere. They're taking their time in this scene to really make it tense and scary. And yeah, we do eventually get introduced to this new type of infected, which is smart, calculated, is kind of tracking its victim, trying to catch them off guard, which is a holy shit moment and really, gets me ready for the rest of the season on how the infected is going to evolve, which I think is great. I think that's really, really smart because we don't want to go down that path, kind of like The Walking Dead, where it's like, it's just the same old, which just gets very boring. The gripe with The Walking Dead was always like, is this apocalypse really that unforgiving? And I get it, the humans are probably the biggest danger at times, but still, it's like these things only walk around. They're easy to kill. What's really the problem here? But in The Last of Us, it's getting cranked up to a notch, and these are going to be much more dangerous than we probably expected, even though they were already pretty damn dangerous. There's also another moment in this episode that I thought was a little bit weird. So it seemed like from everything that we heard that this community, even before Tommy showed up, was already flourishing. They really kind of took him in under their wing, and especially before Joel showed up, like things were going great. I'm sure they had quite a few leaders, a lot of smart people organizing, building, planning, everything like that. I mean, they were able to come up with a lot of smart stuff to just get the power running and everything else going. So they show Tommy now basically being like a leader of this community. At that one point, they show him kind of leading that council of probably some of the most important people in the community, which to me was weird because wasn't the entire design of Tommy's character. He was kind of stupid. Even Joel said that. He doesn't always make the best decisions. He's very rash. He's very easily impressionable. We've seen him several times hesitate under pressure, especially in that first episode in season 1. But now he's one of the biggest leaders in this community. I don't know. I feel like him being more of like a muscle guy on a patrol or something like that. And I know he's involved with the patrol from what I can understand. But it feels a little weird that he's now one of these leaders in the group. Now, this is definitely a bit of a spoiler. I've already talked about quite a few spoilers, but I thought it was pretty predictable when they showed that pipe with the roots in it, that there was going to be cordyceps in there as well. I immediately thought about that. I was like, oh, wait, is that cordyceps? If that's not, I mean, they're kind of lingering on this shot a little bit too long. They're kind of focusing a little bit too much on like a pipe that breaks with roots in it. There's got to be something there. And of course, at the end of the episode, they do reveal that the clickers are going to be notified that there's some movement in this area. So that's going to probably lead to a huge horde of them showing up eventually at one point. But like I said, I thought that was pretty easy to predict. But regardless of that, it still gets me very excited for what's to come in the rest of the season, because now this settlement, something is going to happen, something big here. We're going to get a huge set piece with some crazy action, I'm sure. Very similar to, I think it was like episode 4 or 5, after that resistance group just gets mobbed by them. It's going to be, I feel like that, but just turned up even further. And yeah, we also know, I mean, anytime an apocalyptic movie or TV show, you see this great settlement, everything is going smooth, people are chilling and having a great time, the years are passing by, and things are pretty good. You know, in a show like this, something is eventually going to slip through the cracks, kind of like we've been hinted at in this first episode, that's going to possibly ruin it all. Which, speaking of things slipping through the cracks, there is no way in hell I am trusting just these like infected sniffing dogs 100% of the time to, let us know if there's anyone that's coming into this settlement on these trucks and, these big groups are, infected or not. There is no way in hell. I mean, I'm not letting anybody waltz in here unless, I'm sorry, you are stripping down naked. We are checking for bites. But also, I will say, I think the end of this episode does give us a great cliffhanger. Not only finding out that some of the cordyceps stuff is in the pipe, notifying the clickers that are in the area of what's going on around here, but also we see Abby's group in the winter at night approaching the settlement. They see the lights off in the distance. I think that's great. I think it buckles me up for the rest of this season because we know some cool shit's going to happen. And you add that layer on, like I mentioned earlier, of who's really the villain in that situation, because Joel has done a lot of bad shit in his life. Maybe they have as well. So you can kind of pick and choose who you're rooting for in that situation. But it definitely gets me excited for the rest of the season. And like I mentioned, this episode, not a bad apocalyptic TV show episode by any means. A lot of things amazing in this episode. But as far as The Last of Us goes, like I said, they set the bar pretty high in this show thus far. And this is probably the worst episode, just to me, that we've seen up until this point, 10 episodes into this show. I just felt like I said, it just felt a little sloppy at times. But anyways, everybody, that is my spoiler breakdown of the Season 2, Episode 1 premiere of The Last of Us. Just great to have the show back, though. I mean, this is a badass show. I'm loving it. I am really, really excited for this new season, regardless of some of the stuff I just said. But anyways, everybody, again, I do have a full ranking of all the episodes in Season 1 of The Last of Us on my channel, if you want to check that out. But if you want some more videos from me right now, go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me as well. If you don't want to miss future videos on the channel, the best way to do that is to make sure you subscribe. All of my social media links will be down below in the description if you want to follow me over there. But thanks so much for watching, everybody. Really do appreciate it. My name is Matt, and I will talk to you in the next one.